What really happens when an elderly person closes their eyes for the last time in this world? Have you ever wondered where all that wisdom, all those memories, all that love, gathered over decades of life, goes? Most people are afraid of this moment or would rather not think about it. But what if I told you that according to Edgar Cayce, one of the greatest seers and mediums of the 20th century, this transition isn't an end, but the beginning of an extraordinary journey for the soul. A journey that honors every wrinkle, every emotional scar, every moment of life that person has experienced. If this idea sparks your curiosity, don't waste a second watching this video. Give it a like right now so that this message of hope reaches more people, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming content on the mysteries of human existence. Imagine for a moment Maria, 92 years old, lying in her bed surrounded by family. Her breathing is weak, her body tired after almost a century on this plane. What the physical eyes see is just an elderly person saying goodbye. But what is really happening on the invisible plane is something much more meaningful and beautiful. The very moment Maria takes her last breath, something extraordinary happens. Her consciousness, like someone taking off a heavy coat after a long winter, starts to leave the physical body. According to the accounts recorded by Edgar Cayce in over 14,000 psychic readings, this transition is not traumatic for the soul of an elderly person. Contrary to what many fear, there is a natural, gentle quality to this process that resembles more of a waking up than an ending. It's like finally being able to stretch your wings after being confined in an ever smaller space. For the older person whose life was fulfilling, this moment brings an indescribable lightness, a relief from the pain and physical limitations that may have marked their final years. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, was no ordinary man. Born in 1877 in Kentucky, United States, he discovered at a young age an incredible ability. When entering a self-induced trance state, he could access what he called Akashic records, a kind of universal library where all the information about souls, thoughts, and events from the past, present, and future was stored. Throughout his life, Cayce gave thousands of psychic readings that covered everything from medical cures to profound spiritual matters, like the soul's destiny after death. What makes Cayce's accounts so extraordinary is not just their internal consistency, but also how they align with multiple spiritual traditions from around the world, from Tibetan Buddhism to Gnostic Christianity, while adding surprising details about the soul's journey. For Cayce, death wasn't the end, but a passage, a door that opens to new levels of consciousness and experience. And for souls that have completed a long cycle of life, like our elderly, this passage has very specific and reassuring characteristics. When the soul finally detaches from the physical body, the first stage of this journey, according to Cayce, is a period of guidance and recognition. It's like arriving in a new country and, to your surprise, discovering that you already speak the language. The soul experiences renewed clarity, an expansion of consciousness that lets it understand simultaneously where it is and where it's going. The mental confusions, forgetfulness, or dementia that may have affected the person in their final earthly years simply vanish, like morning mist under the sun. At that moment, something extraordinary happens. Loved ones who passed on before, parents, spouses, friends, and even cherished pets, come to welcome that soul. Imagine the comfort of, after years of longing, reuniting with that familiar face, that smile you thought you had lost forever. Cayce describes these reunions as moments of pure joy and mutual recognition, where love acts like a magnetic force that brings together souls with true connections. The second stage of this journey, perhaps the deepest and most meaningful, is what Cayce called the life review, a process that has a particularly special significance for those who have lived a long life. Imagine a celestial movie theater where you don't just watch the film of your life, you relive it, feeling every emotion, every impact of your actions, but now with an expanded and compassionate perspective. For a soul that has lived 80, 90 years or more, this review isn't a punitive judgment, but an opportunity for deep understanding. What makes this experience so extraordinary is that during this review, the soul not only re-experiences its own emotions, but it also feels how its actions and words affected others. That moment when you comforted a frightened grandchild. Now you feel the relief and security that your words brought. That bitter argument with a child that was never resolved. You experience the pain it caused, not as punishment, but as a learning moment. It is a perfect mirror of consciousness that reflects not only what we did, but who we became over decades of big and small choices. For the elderly, who have nurtured love, patience, wisdom, and generosity during their long earthly journey, this review brings a profound sense of fulfillment. Cayce emphasized that on the other side, our true treasures are not the material possessions we accumulate, but the moments we choose love instead of fear, compassion instead of judgment, forgiveness instead of resentment. Every little act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every moment of genuine presence shines like a gem in this life review. After this period of recognition and review, the soul enters what Cayce described as rest plans, or homes of rest, vibrational dimensions where the soul can absorb the lessons learned and recover from the most challenging earthly experiences. For many elderly people who faced physical decline, chronic illnesses, or the gradual loss of autonomy, this period is especially restorative. It's like finally resting after a long, obstacle-filled journey. In these realms, souls find environments perfectly tuned to their deepest desires and needs. For some, it might be a garden of indescribable beauty. For others, a cosmic library of knowledge. Or for still others, a peaceful retreat by the seaside. These aren't places in a physical sense, but states of consciousness that provide exactly what each soul needs for healing and integration. Time, as we understand it on Earth, flows differently in these realms. Moments can feel like eternities, and what would have been years can be experienced as an instant of expanded understanding. Cayce revealed that during this period, souls gain access to a much broader knowledge about their own spiritual journey. Understanding the purpose behind the hardships faced in old age, for example, brings a deep acceptance and even gratitude for experiences that on Earth seemed only painful or unfair. That long period of dependency that so frustrated the elderly, it now reveals itself as an essential lesson in humility and in allowing oneself to receive. The gradual loss of sight, an opportunity to develop inner vision and intuition. What makes this stage particularly significant for the elderly is the perception that nothing was wasted, not even the seemingly empty moments, the limitations, the waiting, the goodbyes. Every experience, every challenge, every relationship served a greater purpose in the development of the soul. This understanding brings a deep peace that, according to Cayce, is impossible to fully describe in human terms, but that we can catch a glimpse of in the serene acceptance sometimes seen in very old people who are near the transition. One fascinating aspect of Cayce's accounts is his description of how, even in these homes of rest, souls often maintain connections with loved ones still living in the physical world. Often, the elderly person who has passed on continues to watch over and help children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren by sending inspiration, protection, and in some cases, communicating through dreams, intuitions, or subtle signs. That unexpected feeling of a deceased grandparent's presence, that familiar scent of a grandmother that suddenly appears without explanation, that vivid dream in which you receive some advice or comfort. According to Cayce, these are often not just memories or coincidences, but real contacts facilitated by love that transcends the barriers between worlds. After this period of rest and integration comes what Cayce described as one of the most extraordinary stages of the post-life journey, the reunion with what he called the group of souls, or spiritual family. This isn't simply a gathering of biological relatives who passed on earlier, but a circle of souls with whom we have developed deep connections over multiple lifetimes. For the elderly who lived on Earth for decades, this reunion often brings surprising recognitions. Imagine discovering that the kind neighbor who always brought you soup when you were sick was, in another life, your beloved daughter. Or realizing that the bus driver with whom you exchanged a few words every day was, in a distant past, a crucial mentor on your journey. Cayce explained that these souls often intertwine in our lives in ways we can't fully recognize during our lifetime. But on the spiritual plane, the veils fall away, and we see clearly the intricate patterns of relationships that transcend a single life. This reunion is particularly significant for souls who have completed a long earthly journey. After decades of experiences, relationships, losses, and renewals, the elderly soul brings a wealth of learning that it can now share with its spiritual group. It's like a traveler who returns from a long expedition, bringing back treasures of wisdom to enrich the entire community. That's why Cayce mentioned that the arrival of a soul who lived fully into old age is often received with special reverence on the spiritual planes. It is an acknowledgement of the value of perseverance and the slow, profound transformation that only time can achieve. A particularly comforting revelation in Cayce's records refers to what happens to mental and emotional faculties after the transition. Many families suffer watching their beloved elderly ones face dementia, Alzheimer's, or other conditions that seem to rob them of their essence long before the body departs. Cayce assured that these conditions affect only the physical vehicle and its brain mechanisms, not the soul itself. The moment of transition, full consciousness is instantly restored. Imagine a grandfather who spent the last 5 years not recognizing his family, confused about his own identity. In the moment his soul leaves the deteriorated body, his clarity comes back entirely. Every memory, his personality, his characteristic mood, the hard-won wisdom, none of that is lost. It's as if a radio full of static was replaced by a crystal-clear sound system. The music was always there, perfect and complete, only the playback device was off. This understanding brings deep comfort to families who fear that their loved ones have lost themselves even before physical death. Cayce shared accounts of elderly souls who, once freed from the limitations of their aging bodies, experienced a surprising renewal of energy and purpose. On the spiritual plane, these souls often become helpers, guides, and teachers, using the wisdom accumulated over a lifetime to benefit others. That grandmother who always had the right advice and the most comforting hug. On the spiritual plane, her ability to nurture and guide expands exponentially, reaching not only her immediate descendants, but potentially many other souls in need. Many of us have had experiences that suggest this continuation of purpose. Perhaps you felt the comforting presence of a dearly departed elderly family member during a difficult decision. Or maybe you've dreamed of them delivering a clear message that helped you solve an apparently unsolvable problem. Or perhaps you simply experienced an inexplicable intervention in a moment of crisis. According to Cayce, these are not just psychological comfort mechanisms, but often real contacts, bridges between worlds. Another fascinating aspect of the transition for those who have lived a long life on Earth has to do with the perception of time. Cayce explained that on the spiritual plane, time doesn't flow linearly like it does on Earth. A soul that has lived 90 years has a significant advantage. It has developed a certain flexibility in its perception of time. Older people often report that the years pass faster as they age. 1 year at 80 seems much briefer than 1 year at 8. This experience of accelerated time, according to Cayce, is a natural preparation for the transition to realms where time exists in a completely different way. In the spiritual realm, consciousness can expand to encompass what on Earth we would think of as past, present, and future all at once. 1 hour may contain the richness of experience of years, and what would have been decades can be absorbed in a moment of expanded understanding. For the soul that has lived a long earthly life, this adaptation comes naturally, while souls that passed on prematurely may need a longer adjustment period. It's as if old age is a gradual training, a slow detachment from the limitations of chronological time, preparing the consciousness for the expansion that is to come. This understanding helps us see old age not as a decline, but as an essential period of preparation, a gateway that gradually opens. Every time an elderly person reflects on how it feels like yesterday when their children were little, they are experiencing glimmers of the expanded perception that will be fully realized after the transition. Every moment spent revisiting old memories with impressive clarity, even as they might forget what they had for lunch today, is loosening the confines of linear time, rehearsing for the grand expansion that is coming. After this expanded understanding of time and the integration with their group of souls, there comes a moment that Cayce described as one of deep beauty and meaning, planning for the future. Contrary to popular belief that death ends all possibilities, the Akashic records accessed by Cayce reveal that for an elderly soul that has completed its earthly journey, a horizon of new choices and possibilities opens up. It is a moment of creative freedom where the accumulated wisdom serves as a compass for the next steps on the journey. In consultation with spiritual guides and with their group of souls, the person who lived a long life gets the opportunity to evaluate what was learned, what still needs to be developed, and what the most appropriate next steps are for their evolution. Some souls choose to remain on the spiritual planes for a long period, serving as mentors and helpers. Others opt for new learning experiences in other realms or dimensions that Cayce only mentioned in passing, respecting our current limits of understanding. And yes, according to Cayce, many souls eventually choose to return to Earth in a new incarnation. But note, this isn't seen as a punishment or an endless cycle of suffering, but as a conscious choice motivated by the desire for growth, for service, for experiencing love in its infinite expressions. The soul that lived into old age with awareness and purpose often returns with specific missions, carrying with it the distilled wisdom of many lifetimes. A particularly comforting aspect of Cayce's readings relates to the preservation of bonds of love. Those deep connections forged over decades, between spouses who shared 50, 60 years together, between parents and children, between lifelong friends, do not fade with physical death. On the contrary, freed from the limitations and misunderstandings that sometimes cloud earthly relationships, these bonds become even purer and more powerful on the spiritual plane. And further, according to Cayce, when we truly love someone, we create a bond that transcends time and space, a connection that not only survives death, but often guides future encounters in other lives. That elderly couple who passed on just a few months apart after decades together, it's very likely that they'll meet again, perhaps in different roles, recognizing each other on a deep soul level. That love doesn't vanish. It transforms, evolves, and continues to be a creative force in the universe. Perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of Cayce's descriptions of the soul's journey after old age is the continuity of purpose. Every experience, every relationship, every challenge faced during those decades on Earth was significant, even the moments of apparent fragility at the end of life. The dependency that may have frustrated the elderly is revealed as a powerful lesson in humility and receptivity. The forced slowness of the final years turns out to be a precious invitation to contemplation and presence. Nothing was wasted. Everything served the soul's growth. The expanded awareness that the soul reaches after the transition allows for a much deeper understanding of the patterns and purposes that ran through that long life. It's like finally being able to see the complete embroidery after spending decades only looking at the back of the tapestry, with its knots and seemingly chaotic lines. Suddenly, everything makes sense on a level our limited human mind can barely grasp. A phenomenon often reported by people who have had near-death experiences and confirmed by Cayce's readings is the perception that on the spiritual plane we are greeted with one fundamental question. What did you do with the gift of life? How did you love? How did you serve? For the soul that lived a long existence cultivating love, compassion, forgiveness, and service, that question doesn't bring anxiety but a deep sense of fulfillment. Not because life was perfect, but because through trial and error, through falls and new starts, the soul gradually learned to prioritize what truly matters. Cayce emphasized that on the other side, we are not judged by a punitive God, but by our own expanded consciousness, which can finally see clearly the impact of every choice, every word, every action. And surprisingly, the moments of greatest spiritual growth are often not the grand achievements or material successes, but the small everyday acts of kindness, the moments of genuine forgiveness, the instances of pure presence with those we love. Old age, with its invitation to let go and focus on what is essential, often fosters many of these precious moments. If you have a beloved elderly person in your life, or if you are in your later years, what comfort there is in this understanding. Every kind smile for the caregiver, every word of gratitude, every moment of peaceful acceptance of limitations, every prayer whispered in the silence of the night, none of these are just insignificant details, but powerful acts of spiritual evolution. Old age isn't the end of the growth journey, but often its deepest and most meaningful chapter. And about that worry many have. Will my dad, mom, grandpa still recognize me on the other side? Cayce answered with an unequivocal yes. Not only will they recognize us, but they will understand and love us with a clarity and depth that isn't possible during earthly life. Free from the limitations of the physical body and conditioned mind, their love expands, becoming more inclusive, wiser, and more unconditional. If you have experienced the loss of a dearly loved elder, allow yourself to be open to the possibility of subtle signs of their ongoing presence. Perhaps in vivid dreams where they appear healthy and radiant, maybe in significant coincidences that seem to guide you during important moments, perhaps in the unexplained appearance of a specific bird at times of crucial decisions, or simply in that sudden and inexplicable feeling of peace and love that surrounds you when you need it most. According to Cayce, these aren't just psychological comfort mechanisms, but often real contacts, bridges between worlds. If this content touches your heart, please share it with someone who may be dealing with the grief of losing a dear elderly one or who is watching a loved one's final days. This expanded perspective on the soul's journey can bring genuine comfort and a transformative view on the meaning of old age and transition. Also, leave a comment sharing your personal experiences with loved ones who have passed. Every story helps create a collective tapestry of understanding about these deep mysteries. Ultimately, what Edgar Cayce offers us through his extraordinary accounts of the soul's journey after earthly life is a vision of hope, continuity, and meaning. Death, especially after a long and well-lived life, isn't an end but a transformation, a graduation, a return to our true expansive nature. As Cayce himself once said, death is just a door through which we move from one room to another, much larger, in the great mansion of existence. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to access more stories like this. May we honor our elderly while they're still with us, recognizing that they are in a precious phase of preparation for an extraordinary journey. And may we look at our own mortality not with fear, but with a reverent curiosity and a calm confidence that when our time comes, we will be welcomed with open arms into the spiritual home by all those we love and who went before us. It isn't a goodbye, but a see you soon on a plane where love is the only reality that remains, grows, and expands forever.